Thank you, Whittaker. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Columbus, an inclusive spiritual community of people who support each other in their personal search for truth and meaning. I'm Rick Spradlin, your service leader this morning. I'll also be your speaker, and a little later on, I'll be presenting De-Escalation, how not to make a problem worse. And we'll enjoy more music from Whittaker Lock. We have some announcements now, beginning with a reminder that this is a hybrid service this morning. Some of us are here in person, and some of us are joining us by Zoom. For those who are joining us by Zoom, if you would prefer not to have your face recorded, just switch off the camera, but we love to see faces. It helps us to connect, makes it more personal. And later, when we reach the joys and concerns portion of the service, that part will be edited out of the service in case of the recording later, in case you want to say anything that's personal. Also, at the end of our service, when we do our usual questions and comments, that portion will also be edited out. We also have the additional announcements. We are continuing to collect for the Homeless Resource Network and Feeding the Valley, as well as Pasamigos. Bill Harlan has a few words for us this morning about Pasamigos.
Thank you, Rick. And since I'm the cameraman and I'm not there to switch, I'm going to come over here.
Okay. You want me to go do it? No, you don't. You don't want me. You don't want me doing it.
Give away the plate, and I think we'll talk about this all this month, is the mountain, and that's a great cause, and we continue to support that. And we're also supporting a Homeless Resource Network, and of course, Feeding the Valley, all very important. I'm a member of Pasamigos, and the reason I'm giving a plug for that this morning is we have just found out, not been confirmed, but we've talked to guards and inmates at the Stewart Detention Center, and we think that somewhere between 200 and 300 women are arriving probably from the border, and we don't know if it's always been men for years down there, and now it's turning over to women. And when the immigrants are released, it's always been guys. So we have T-shirts, and they have the clothes they were arrested in, most of them, not been washed in months or years. And so we're prepared for guys, not so much for women. And the best thing we can do, we thought about asking for women's clothing, but it's too hard to figure out. So, but we can use cash, because sometimes they have enough money, we can make a quick trip to Walmart or someplace and get them some clothes. So Pasamigos, keep Pasamigos in your thoughts, and you can do that directly through us, and Ron will take care of it, or you can go to the Pasamigos website. And thank you for, thank you for letting me take this over for a minute.
Thank you, Bill. And next week, May 9th, our program will be presented by Danielle Neal on Mother's Day. And May 16th, Joni Andres will share with us a program titled Mindfulness and the Seven Principles. Now, May 16th is a Zoom-only service. There's no in-person service on May 16th. May 23rd, John Comiskey will be our speaker, talking about the mountain, the UU Retreat and Learning Center. The mountain will also be the recipient of our Giveaway the Plate donation for this month as part of a matching fund drive with the UUA. And May 30th, John Nix will present Thoughts on Memorial Day. And I believe Hal Majette will speak to us, our president, will speak to us about the Wednesday night discussion group.
Wednesday night we're trying some different things, because as we transition to June 6th, when we open fully, we'll have a Zoom presence, and we've got to discuss that. So this is something for us to try out. We're having a in-person Wednesday night discussion. It starts at 7 o'clock here. We'll also have it on Zoom and see how that goes. It might work, it might not. No promises, but at least we got to try. And that way, some people who don't want to come in can still participate. And if it doesn't work, then we'll probably just go to an in-presence only. So we'll see where it goes from there.
So Hal asked me about a subject for Wednesday night, and because that's the way we used to do it. And so I came up with one. It's not exactly original, and we have an expert on it in our midst. And Time Magazine has published a very interesting article on climate change. Now, we're all familiar with climate change, and Hal is an expert on it. But this is offering some different solutions. And it's an educational approach. And it's very broad and far sweeping. And so I hope a bunch of you will come Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, and we'll have a good discussion and socialize some.
Do we have any other short announcements? Okay. We begin our services by lighting the chalice. The chalice speaks to us of reason, tolerance, and freedom, and also compassion, justice, and love. May its flame ever warm and illuminate our lives. And now let us once again affirm the 7 principles which sum up the core values that Unitarian Universalist congregations support and promote. Please read them aloud with me. Number 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Number 2, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Number 3, the acceptance of one another
and encouragement to spiritual growth
in our congregations. Number 4, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Number 5, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. Number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And now, one of the ways we proclaim the vitality of our fellowship is through sharing brief and personal joys and concerns. And please note, this is not a time for announcements or commercials or politics. Rather, it's a time to share what's important in our own lives. We'll start by lighting a candle for sorrows or concerns you might not want to share in public. Now we have a great joy. Many of you know Ralph Puckett is a friend of the fellowship, attends here quite often. Ralph is now going to be a recipient of the Medal of Honor. If you did not see the article in the paper, it's good enough. I'm just going to share the whole thing with you. Shivering in freezing temperatures, about 50 U.S. soldiers braced for the worst. Hundreds of Chinese soldiers were about to launch a series of bloody attacks on the hill the Americans had just taken under fire, and no reinforcements were within a mile. The clash that then First Lieutenant Ralph Puckett and his soldiers experienced that night on Hill 205 came at the outset of the Battle of the Kongchan River, a pivotal moment in which senior U.S. commanders were surprised by China's full-scale entry into the Korean War. Thousands of U.S. soldiers died in following days as they withdrew hundreds of miles back into South Korea in what the Army now describes as the longest retreat in U.S. military history. Puckett, who commanded the 8th Army Ranger Company, was wounded by a hand grenade in the first attack on the hill on November 25th, 1950, but stayed in command. American and South Korean soldiers absorbed 5 more chaotic armed assaults through the night before Puckett ordered his soldiers to withdraw the following morning as the Chinese threatened to overrun them. I had been wounded 3 times by then, and I was lying there in my foxhole, unable to do anything. Puckett would later recall for an oral history report. I could see 3 Chinese about 15 yards away from me, and they were bayoneting or shooting some of my wounded Rangers who were in the foxholes. More than 70 years later, Puckett, now 94, will receive the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor in combat for his actions. President Biden called Puckett at home in Columbus, Georgia on Friday to inform him of his decision to approve the award, said John Locke, a retired Army officer who began petitioning the Army for reconsideration of Puck's actions in 2003. The Army credits Puckett with leading his soldiers across an open field to take the hill under intense fire, braving enemy fire repeatedly to check on his soldiers after he was wounded the first time, and directing danger close artillery strikes near his own position to ward off advancing Chinese soldiers. Puckett has said he told his soldiers to leave him behind after he was incapacitated, but two privates first class, Billy G. Walls and David L. Pollock, carried him to safety. Puckett would go on to earn the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor in combat for his actions in the battle. The recognition came near the outset of a 22-year career that also included a second Distinguished Service Cross and 2 Silver Stars for valor in Vietnam. Puckett was awarded 5 Purple Hearts for injuries suffered in combat and 2 Bronze Stars medals with the V device for valor. With an upgrade to the Medal of Honor, Puckett will be one of the most highly decorated service members for valor in U.S. military history, Locke said. Among those who assisted in Locke's case were the late Senator John McCain, who contacted the Army on Puckett's behalf a few months before dying of cancer in 2018, and retired General Joseph Votel and Stanley McChrystal, who know Puckett through their mutual service as Rangers, according to documents that Locke provided to the Washington Post. Then First Lieutenant Puckett's actions on Hill 205 in 1950 exemplified personal bravery beyond the call of duty, risking his own life as he drew enemy fire so his men could locate, engage, and destroy an enemy machine gun nest and kill a sniper. Puckett's wife, Jean, said in a phone interview that the family hopes to visit the White House for the ceremony. Considering her husband's advancing age and some health concerns, she expressed concerns about how long it was taking. He is not the one who kept pushing this. It's been John and our immediate family who want him to be able to receive it personally if he's going to be awarded that medal, she said. Ralph felt that the Distinguished Service Cross was honor enough. For years, Puckett had been a spiritual and cultural leader of sorts for the 75th Ranger Regiment. As an honorary colonel for the regiment, he traveled overseas in his 80s with U.S. commanders, including to Iraq and Afghanistan, and regularly met with soldiers at Fort Benning. Votel, who retired as chief of the U.S. Central Command in 2019, was commander of the 1st Ranger Battalion when he got to know Puckett during his exercise in South Korea. Puckett shared details about his experiences fighting in the Korean War, connecting to the soldiers with his down-to-earthiness, he said. He is a very noble individual. He adds a level of dignity, a level of stalwartness to everything that he is part of, Votel said in an interview. He's just really a revered figure in the Ranger Regiment. Puckett was born in Tifton, Georgia, retired from the Army in 1971, and settled near Fort Benning after retiring as a civilian in the 1990s. His wife said they met there in a hospital decades earlier, as Puckett was healing from the wounds he had suffered in North Korea. More recently, Puckett said he supported women serving in combat units. He said during an interview with the Washington Post in 2015 that he believed some could meet the standards and wanted to see them do it. His granddaughter, an Army captain, is an artillery officer, Locke said. Puckett recently made an appearance at the Best Ranger competition, in which 2-person teams of soldiers compete in an event stretching over 2.5 days. Thank you for being what you are and doing what you're doing, Puckett said in remarks captured and posted online by the Army. You set the standard for the Army. You set the standard for the Rangers. You set the standard for us all. And now, once again, Ralph has raised those standards. And now for our celebration of life toast, unique to this fellowship. Our toast carries no doctrinal symbolism. It's not a sacrament. It's simply a warm tradition, and we invite you to share it with us. Please lift your cups, virtual or not. I'll read the toast, and we'll all join in together on the last line. We celebrate life. We celebrate life with its beauty and its pain. We lift these cups in tribute to the achievements of human minds and hands, and in sensitivity to the frustrations of misfortune and heartache. Not fixing blame or credit for the outcome of chance, sensing the risk, savoring the joy, sharing it all. Knowing of the certainty of death and remembering the value of each moment, we drink our toast of celebration to this time, to the future, to each other, to the throbbing of the earth and sea and sky with life. Together, we drink this toast in celebration of life. This morning's offering will now be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship. If you're watching us on Zoom, you can mail offerings to UUFC at Box 698, Fortson, Georgia, 31808, or you can use PayPal. Now, if you're using PayPal, hit Send Money and put as the recipient our email address, uufcga@gmail.com. Thank you, Whittaker. The death of George Floyd captured the attention of the nation. It wasn't the first time that a citizen had died at the hands of a police officer under circumstances that did not appear to acquire deadly force. George Floyd was no angel. He wasn't man of the year by any stretch of the imagination, but he also wasn't America's most wanted. He wasn't committing armed robbery. He was passing a counterfeit note. With each report of a lethal encounter with police, the topic grows in our public discourse. As a result, we often hear the term de-escalation thrown out. Well, what is de-escalation? How is it done? And how effective is it? The dictionary defines de-escalation as reducing the intensity of a situation. It's used in psychiatric settings, public schools, and law enforcement. Two key concepts you have to remember regarding de-escalation. Number one, reasoning with an angry person is not possible. The only objective when attempting to de-escalate is to reduce the level of agitation to make reasoning more possible soon after. Number two, de-escalation techniques are inherently abnormal. They go against our natural fight or flight instincts. To make them work, we have to remain calm and detached, and these techniques require lots of practice. Some precipitating factors that sometimes lead to the need for de-escalation include the loss of personal power, an attempt to maintain self-esteem, fear, a sense of failure, seeking attention, displaced anger, as well as psychological and physiological causes. Sometimes the aggression comes from the person in authority. I've seen teachers who were so upset about the extreme level of disrespect that a student was showing them that they actually elevated the tension of a situation and made the encounter worse. When it comes to the techniques used in de-escalation, there is no universal standard, but one of the most popular is the behavioral change stairway model, the BCSM, developed by the FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit. BCSM consists of 5 sequential steps. The first is active listening. You have to listen to their side and make them aware that you're listening. Negotiation expert Chris Voss, the former lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI, explains that when someone is making an argument, the only time that they are silent is when they're thinking about their own argument, about what they're going to say next. They've got a voice in their head that's talking to them. They're not listening to you. When they're making their argument to you, you're thinking about your argument. That's the voice in your head that's talking to you. To make this work, you silence the voice inside their head by getting them to talk out their side first through active listening. Show them that you're listening by nodding and saying, okay, all right, I see. Step 2 is empathy. You get an understanding of where they're coming from and of how they feel. Repeat back to them what you think you just heard them say. Okay, so what you're saying is blah, 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 blah. Paraphrase then what you think they just said. It's important for you to understand that what you're doing here is showing that you understand how they feel. You're not agreeing with them. You don't have to agree with them. That's where the detachment comes in play here. Number 3 is rapport. Okay, empathy is what you feel, but rapport is when they feel it back. That's when they start to trust you. When a person wins an argument, their brain is flooded with the hormone adrenaline, which is addictive. But another hormone that is far more addictive is oxytocin. When someone feels accepted by another, when you establish a bond with someone, their brain is flooded with oxytocin. is part of what makes Facebook so popular. It's attracted, oxytocin is activated by human connection and it opens up networks in our prefrontal cortex, which further increases our ability to trust someone. Our goal in de-escalation is to produce more oxytocin in the agitated person's brain and less adrenaline. Step 4 is influence. Now that they trust you, you can work on problem solving with them and then recommend a course of action. That's the important part there. You never make any recommendations of what they should do until after you have listened, shown empathy, built a rapport. It's only then that they might listen to you. And 5 is behavioral change. This is when they act. Even if it's not exactly what you wanted them to do, hopefully it'll be more agreeable than what they had originally set out to do without your intervention. These techniques can be applied in everyday negotiation scenarios. It's not only useful for crisis negotiation. You can apply them to almost any form of disagreement or conflict. In Washington, Republicans and Democrats would like to see more de-escalation training given to our police officers, but a critical question is whether teaching police officers to rely on communication and negotiation tactics rather than physical force would be effective for the majority of officers to buy into the idea. As of now, only approximately 15% of departments give some type of de-escalation training to their officers. But without a national governing body for law enforcement, there is no agreed upon standard of what qualifies as de-escalation training, and there's no standard for that training. Experts who study de-escalation, as well as law enforcement officials who mandate it for their forces, say that its effectiveness in the field is mixed. On the one hand, there's no conclusive evidence that de-escalation training for police officers works, but there's also no evidence that it doesn't work because there's just too little rigorous study of these techniques when they're used by police. What studies have been done suggest they can be very effective. However, these studies were conducted in psychiatric settings and performed by mental health professionals who spend a considerable amount of time practicing these techniques. And unlike the general American public, clients in a mental health setting are usually not carrying concealed firearms. I said usually. Hopefully they're not carrying concealed firearms. Law enforcement leaders who require de-escalation training in their departments are enthusiastic about its potential on an anecdotal level. But some say that they aren't sure that every officer can be trained this way. There are too many officers who embrace the warrior mentality rather than the peaceful guardian mindset. In my personal opinion, we need to start with a national standard for police training. There are currently over 600 state and local police academies in the US, but there is no national minimum standards for licensing police officers in the US. Now, there is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, I believe it's pronounced CALIA, an authority whose primary mission is to accredit public safety agencies, namely law enforcement agencies and training academies and campus police safety agencies. They require police agencies, they require police academies to have certain elements as part of their institutions, but there's no common standard on teaching the use of deadly force or a requirement to teach de-escalation techniques. We need for every officer to be as well practiced in de-escalation as they are with their sidearm, as proficient in talking someone down as they are in taking someone down. Either that, or we need them paired with a partner who is a mental health professional. Thank you for listening. And now, before we extinguish the chalice, please remember to stay safe, look out for one another, and treat the stranger as you would yourself. We extinguish the chalice here that it might glow gently in our hearts as we leave this place. go. More than one way. Now, after our closing words, Whittaker will close us out with hymn 292, If I Can Stop One Heart from Breaking. And then afterwards, we'll have our question and comment session. Now, if you'll please stand with us in body or spirit for our closing words. With unity of spirit, we go our ways in universal fellowship until we meet again. So long.